Hello there, Project Open Mic audience. This is Andre, and welcome to another Andre's Mic segment. And this one's actually inspired by TikTok. Oh gosh, just because there are people saying things and they're saying those things without thinking about what they're saying. It's like they see the context of something one directional, unilaterally, but they don't think about the opposite direction of that same statement. And what is this statement I'm talking about? That is very much nonsensical. That men are emotionally attracted to other men, but sexually attracted to women. For one, that statement couldn't be true because there are gay men. Two, this is said because of a question where a guy was asked, or several guys were asked, if they would prefer to cheat on their girl or rat on their friends. Now, the answer was that they would cheat on their girl. And that's probably because they're looking at it from the standpoint of who would stay in their life. Or who's more likely to stay in their life? Is it the girl that they were with or the friends that they've had? And for a lot of guys, they're likely to keep their friends in their lives should things go different with their woman. That's not everyone. And I'm not saying there's a right or wrong to it. But that's just how a lot of guys think. So, with that being said, there are several people running the gambit of, well, yeah, these guys are far more interested in their friends and stuff. Like, one, it's not about the interest of the friends. Like, sometimes those people have been long standing in your life. You've got to bond with them in a certain way that things go. Secondly, friends doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be a guy friend. Because you can be friends with the opposite gender, even though a lot of people try to say you can't. You can be. You just have to find people you can be friends with. Not everybody's willing or ending up interested in sticking or being stuck by somebody that they're friends with. That's just not the case for everyone. But it's ridiculous to run that idea because women do the exact same thing where they will pledge a loyalty to their friends over their man or over their significant other. It's not a thing exclusive to men. That's where I find the stupidity of it. Because it sounds like people just take one side of it and be like, okay, well, we'll just run with this. And this is the case because of that. So that means every woman who would rather cheat on their boyfriend than snitch on their friends is more emotionally attracted to other women and just sexually attracted to men? Because when you flip it around, it still sounds like nonsense, doesn't it? But people don't do that. They don't think critically back and forth like that. It's like, okay, well, this matches what I'm saying. So obviously, this logic works. But if you were to flip it around and use it on them, they would get mad. They would get agitated. They get angry. They'd be like, well, how dare you say that? Then why are you saying what you're saying? If you can't use this logic in multiple different directions, then the logic is broken. If it doesn't work one way, it doesn't work another. Yes, there are some special cases that are exception to that rule, but this is not one of them. So I look at that and I'm like, do any of you actually think? Or is it that you're just so used to being able to say whatever you want to say without consequence or without someone going back against your thoughts that you just think you're automatically right whenever you say something? I mean, yeah, I know I tend to think I'm right when I'm saying something, but I'm also open to being corrected. I'm also open to getting new information. I'm open to hearing, hey, maybe this isn't right. I'm open to that. I'm not against it. I've never been against that. But it's just like the statement doesn't work. because there are too many variables that can change. Too many variables that can change, and there are too many variables that if you swap their positions, the logic would be broken. And it's not like this is like math, where you can say, well, yeah, it would work both ways with math. Because you can say 5 times 7 is 35, and 7 times 5 is 35. You get the same outcome. So if you're going to say, hey, when women would rather snitch, not rather snitch on their friends, women would rather cheat on their boyfriends or husbands versus ratting on their friends, that doesn't equal 35. But hey, a guy willing to cheat on his woman and not snitch on his friends does equal 35. It doesn't make sense. Again, the logic just does not work back and forth like that. It sounds good to some people, but it really legitimately doesn't make any sense. Either way, this discussion needs a lot more nuance than people are trying to give it. And I am not one that likes one-sided arguments that are honestly just not truthful. If you don't get down to the root of the problem, you're never going to solve the problem. It's like when people are trying to have these discussions about men and women and the issues that men and women have with each other, they're not actually trying to get to the root of the problem. It's more like they're trying to find a way to divide men and women more and cause arguments. And it's working, to be honest. From my standpoint, it works. Because the more divisive something is, the more argument happens. Like, there was, and this is also from TikTok, but this is somebody who's sensible. There was a guy who did a video, 2 videos in fact. One on why men cheat, and another on why women cheat. And he's heard, because I think he's a therapist of some sort, he's heard from both men and women generally the same reasons. But the video with women, the video with men, the reasons why men cheat, got majority negative comments from everyone, well, not everyone, but most of the women who responded to it. And they even did reactions where they wholeheartedly treated his video showing his results. Treated his video like he was saying that men are allowed to get away with what they're doing, which was never the point of the discussion. It was a social experiment. And then his findings for the video about why women cheat on their husbands. Most of the guys that responded with, oh, okay, this makes sense to me. I didn't think about that. Let me find ways to correct myself to see if I can fix whatever issues are going on that may lead to this road. And there's a huge contrast between how the men handled hearing those things to how the women handled it. And he basically said the same thing on both videos. That's the funny part. Now, I'm not saying that this means that women don't hold themselves accountable, but this does mean that there are a good number of women who won't. Maybe even a larger number of women who won't, because they would prefer the blame be shifted. But this is very similar in context to the whole, hey, guys will cheat on their girl before they go and snitch on their friends or hold their friends accountable. Honestly, if you're in a friend group with people and you know they're doing something you don't agree with, there may be an understanding among those friends that as long as I'm not involved in your mess, I'm not going to say anything about your mess. And it's the same thing with women. I've seen it with women. If I'm not involved in your mess, you don't drag me into it, I'm not going to say anything because it's not my place. That's typically how it's treated. My biggest problem is that we'll treat one thing like it is horrible, but then excuse it when it comes from the other side, and that's not how that should work. If I'm going to say what you're doing is bad and you're a guy, if I see a woman doing the same thing, I'm going to still say it's bad. There's no preferential treatment there. And again, if the friend is of the opposite gender, would it still make a difference? No. Because people tend to forget that that's a possibility for some reason. Like, learn to not get so wrapped up in what you feel all the time. And just think. Sometimes it's appropriate to let your feelings take over, and other times it's appropriate to let your logic take over. That's another thing I notice with a lot of people. Because if you tell people you use facts and reasoning for a lot of your stuff, then they'll get mad. But then there are situations where facts and reasoning just aren't the end-all be-all. Because facts and reasoning can be manipulated and used a particular way. So that's when it comes down to having to use your gut and use what you feel in order to work your way through. You kind of need both sides of the equation, and I think people tend to forget that. Just like I say, it's equally as bad if a man cheats on a woman as it is as a woman cheats on a man. You can't, I don't condone it, even though I've had my fair share of history on both sides of that coin. And cars would want to just roll through while I'm talking. But I've had a decent share of history on both sides of that coin. So I know what both sides feel like. And for those who actually truly care about their significant other, their spouse, their partner, their husband, wife, whatever you want to call it, for those people, they feel like crap when they do something wrong, and they feel like crap when they are wronged. Only people that really don't care are people who are highly selfish or actually narcissistic. But I just think that this argument, this statement is ridiculous to make based upon someone being more willing to protect their friends over someone that they may not have in their life permanently. Especially if they know there's a chance they may not have that person in their life permanently. Yeah, I get that there are some situations where that just doesn't work. Like if you are married and you are in a good relationship, it doesn't make sense. But maybe these people don't know what a good relationship is. That's another factor to consider. Because at least the people that I saw that these questions were asked to, the guys that were asked, when the lady was asking them if they would cheat on their girl or snitch on their friends, and then the girls, when the guy was asking, and these are two separate events, these people may not know what a healthy relationship is because they never grew up around them. And they potentially may not have the tools to figure out what a healthy relationship is like. Those are things that should also be considered when we're talking about random people on the street being asked the question at random. Say, I don't know you, and you're not giving me a specific set of circumstances, so in a general scope, this is what my answer will be. Again, I'm not preaching that there's a right or wrong to it, because either way, it's a catch-22. Because the question is set up to make you have a negative outcome no matter what. It comes down to which negative outcome are you more willing to deal with. Which one is going to hurt you more or which one's going to hurt you less. And people act accordingly. But again, both men and women do it. So this whole stupidity behind, oh, well, hey, if he's willing to cheat on you over telling on his friends, he's emotionally attracted to men. I also want to point out that emotional attachment and emotional attraction are two different things. Because you could be emotionally attached to your friends far more than someone who's new into your life because you've known them forever. Blech, tongue-tied. But you may just happen to be more emotionally attracted to the person that you're trying to get into a relationship with. There's so many things that could be considered that people just overlooked and didn't even think about. Not one iota did they think about that. It's just, hey, this is information that fits a narrative I want to push, and that narrative I'm going to push until it's dead. Critical thinking is needed. Because if you get that conclusion from such insignificant information, then you have already drawn that conclusion in your mind, and you just needed that to prove your point. That's how I see it anyway. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was a reactionary guess. And the person that saw it, the woman that saw it, that made the statement was like, yeah, this makes sense to me. It's still incorrect, but hey, she can think that. It just likely won't go very far. Because if you go into situations thinking like that, that means that you're already giving up. And if you're already giving up, and you're trying to woo the opposite sex, guess what's going to happen? You're not going to be successful. Simple as that. And the funny thing is for me is that when this type of stuff comes up, I end up having these discussions with my wife. And I'll see her going one direction because I know she thinks in a particular type of way. And then I have to hit her with the opposite of that. To say, hey, there's more to this. There's more nuance. Let's look at this a little bit differently. And sometimes she'll do the same for me in a different situation. But it's one of those things like if you can't have this type of discussion, like just say for a fact that you are with someone and you see this video pop up and the guy says he would rather cheat on his partner versus telling on his friends. And you take into mind what the following that up with what the woman says that, hey, guys are emotionally more interested in men than they are women. And they're only interested in women sexually. You take that into an argument with your spouse, you're going to ruin your relationship. Because you're going to automatically assume, based on a few anecdotes that are in a generalized scope, what your partner thinks, what your spouse thinks. And that's the type of stuff that ruins relationships. If you can't have open discussion with something like that. So again, it's highly divisive from what I'm seeing of it. And there are people that make jokes going back and forth and all that. And there are even people that I follow that I respect, that I think that they just have a totally wrong opinion on this. And I think their opinion is wrong because of how they're thinking about it. Not because they have a different standpoint from it. But because their thoughts don't seem like they're trying to encompass the full scale of things. It's just running with the information as presented. And this is because these are some people that I have seen talk about things where they think about the full scale of what they're talking about. So it's a little bit surprising and jarring to me that for this one particular subject, their bias bleeds right through and they don't know how to pull it back some in order to see things a different way. And I think that's the one thing that is not being considered at all, and that's that there is an implicit bias when it comes down to this. Because you can hear it as a man and be like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Guys aren't the only ones that do that, but you only think that because you're a guy. And then women will hear, well, yeah, obviously that's correct. That's right because they're women. Neither side is stopping to think about what it looks like for the other side. I think that's what's critically missing here. So, I mean, while this is me rambling for a good 20 minutes and having several different tangents, I apologize. It's just how my brain works. Hopefully, and I know it probably sounded a little ironic toward the end there with what I was saying, because somebody's going to be like, well, then wouldn't you be folly to that bias, Andre? Yes, I would be folly to that bias, because that was my immediate response. But I spent the time trying to think it out, because I didn't want my bias to be the only thing that I was judging the situation off of. I know I have biases, and I will always have biases. No one is without a bias. But if you can think beyond your bias and you can kind of look at situations from multiple angles, you're a step ahead of everyone else. And I also think that makes for good conversation. Because everybody's so ready to bleed into their biases that they don't want to take the time to learn about potentially anyone else's and why they have those biases. So it's a good discussion. It's a good way to think, to allow yourself to work through different angles of a discussion. But I'm going to wrap this up. So thank you guys for spending or wasting your time hearing me speak. I'll try to be a little bit more interesting with my subject matter. But this was just something that came up recently that I just I kind of wanted to talk about. But if you're interested, you can look it up. Just type out "men are more emotionally attracted to men," and I'm pretty sure you'll find it somewhere on Google. With that said, thank you guys again for listening. I hope to bring you more interesting discussions in the future, because I do have some that are already planned out mentally. I just have to actually record them. But yep, that's it. Hope that this does help someone in some way, that everybody is of sound mind, of sound health, mentally, physically, emotionally, and that you're looking forward to my potential next discussion. If not, I understand. But peace out.